All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Alejandro Massa, and I'm here today with David Timis. We're going to have a very interesting conversation about automation and the future of work and the future-proof skills young people need to develop to be relevant in the job market in the future. So it's a subject both David and I are very passionate about, and we'll be glad to share our insights with you. So, David, why don't you start about telling us about a bit about yourself and your work and
Yeah,
what you do?
thank you for the intro, Alejandro, and thank you to the organizers for the invitation. So, my name is David. I come originally from Transylvania, Romania, where I also find myself these days since the crisis has started. So, I'm here with family and friends. My background is in business and in public policy, but throughout my young career, I've been working at the intersection between technology, education, and public policy. These are the three areas in which I kind of dabbled in, and the future of work as a name came to me actually fairly recent. I think this year or late last year in terms of characterizing my work as something being related to future of work, because everything I've done since I finished pretty much high school was to prepare young people for various trainings I delivered or helped organize to be better prepared for this volatile future of work we all have to face in the coming years. Um, what probably is most relevant as an experience, especially for this talk, is that I've led Google's Grow with Google initiative in Romania, my home country, for 3 years, training over 100,000 young people in digital skills in this case. So it was mostly focused on the technical side, digital marketing more specific. But in the meantime, since the crisis started, I actually started working for a US-based startup called Mento, which is helping people with their job search, be it unemployed people, be it people who just want to transition. And I'm super excited that we currently actually help people working for a big tech company who are soon going to be laid off because their jobs are going to be replaced by robots. And we're actually helping them uh, reskill themselves and also transition better to the job market to another role outside of this company, basically. So, still working on the future of work more intensely than ever, especially since the crisis has started.
That's great, David, and I think you have very valuable insights and lessons to share with us. Now, you mentioned something that might sound scary to some of us about being our jobs being taken by robots. No, so how do you envision the future? Will robots be doing all the work? Will humans be doing part of the work? So how do you envision this future, and what should we be looking for or preparing ourselves for?
Yeah, so the future, if I have to envision it in an acronym, it would be VUCA, which is a term borrowed from the American military, which means volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, VUCA. And I think as much as it sounds scary, but this is the future when it comes to the future of work. Nobody knows what the future jobs would look like. I mean, nobody knew 10 years ago that being a YouTube vlogger would be a job, but now it is for many people, or an Instagram influencer. So the jobs we cannot predict, but what we can predict with a fair degree of certainty is what skills will be relevant. And we will talk about them maybe a bit later. But then to answer your question more specifically, I think, yes, we should be worried about robots taking our jobs if we have specific sort of jobs. I mean, the people I'm helping now with Mento are people working in warehouses, so people working in physical jobs, which are going to be probably some of the first to be automated. Other jobs which are fairly at risk of automation are jobs in admin, jobs doing very mundane and routine tasks on Excel. These are jobs for which either a robot or a software is already automating the work humans do. And it's actually for the good because obviously not many people want these jobs. It's jobs that are not well paid, not safe, not exciting. However, the big question is, what do you do with these people? Because some of them are in their, mid 40s, mid 50s. How do you reskill them? How do you teach them digital skills if they maybe never use them properly in their job or in their daily lives? So this is the big question for everybody. Automation is coming, and it's actually for the better. But what do you do with all these people who, unfortunately, are missing out and are being left behind by automation?
Right. Right. So I think you describe something that we've all thought of. No, so how do you prepare yourself for a scenario that you don't really know what it would be like? And but I think you do have some advice, no? So what types of skills do you think would prepare a person better for that very volatile and uncertain scenario in the future? What should they focus on developing?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm of a mentality of never putting all your eggs into one basket. So never just focusing on one type of skills, saying that oh these skills will be D1. No, it's actually three skill clusters, as I call them, three groups of skills, which I think are going to be super important. And if you're going to manage to learn at least in each cluster a few of them, you're going to be pretty okay, I think, in the future when it comes to jobs. So the first cluster is people skills or soft skills as they're also called, even though I would like to say they're actually pretty hard skills to learn. Most people are actually struggling with soft skills these days, not with hard skills. If we look at the general population, soft skills, if you want to get the best ones, or from me, I mean, my recommendation is the 4 C's. It's easy to remember: communication, creativity, critical thinking, collaboration. If you have these 4 C's, these 4 skills, you already have probably the top soft skills you need in most jobs. However, obviously there's more soft skills, but you should definitely start with these ones. Second cluster is digital skills slash technical skills slash, as they're also called, hard skills, which are come in two types. There are basic skills, which is using Microsoft Office or Google G Suite, or advanced skills such as coding or data science. Again, basic ones are, I think, the new ABCs. Basic digital skills are like learning English if you're from a English speaking country, or in my case Romanian. Everybody should learn them from grade 1 in primary school. Basic digital skills. Whilst obviously for the advanced ones, it's a matter of choice. If you want to go down that route, it's obviously good to be a coder these days, but not everybody is, let's say, either equipped but not equipped, but passionate about it. Because, for instance, even in my case, coding is not something I'm keen on learning it to an advanced level. It's just not my cup of tea. However, what I think, and to move on to the last cluster, which I think are the skills most needed, especially in these days, going through a crisis globally, it's growth mindset skills. Skills such as flexibility, adaptability, resilience, and very important, grit. These 4 skills, and obviously there's more in this growth mindset group cluster, or sorry, skills cluster. These would be the skills that you need to thrive in this VUCA environment we have to live in. And flexibility and adaptability maybe are very clear for most people. What I want to emphasize is resilience and grit, because there's a slight difference between the two. Many people, I guess, confuse them, and it was even in my case when I started researching them a bit. Grit is actually the perseverance component, persevering through adversity, while resilience is the ability as an elastic, to kind of jump from a challenge, or from a failure, or from any sort of a disaster coming your way, so to say. So usually you're resilient, so you jump back, but then you are gritty, so perseverant, in order to continue pushing on, regardless of the situation you find yourself is still difficult. So I think by having people skills, digital skills, and growth mindset skills, you'll be able to be, I would say, bulletproofed in a sense when it comes to the automation of your job, because having at least one skill out of each of these clusters, will keep you safe in the coming years, I think.
Great. I think I totally agree. And at our company, we're around 50 people, no? And I've seen that the people who thrive and grow and are very successful are the ones that share these 3 sets of skills. They're really good technically. They have people skills, even if they're coders or data scientists, and they have this growth mindset. They can adapt, they're resilient, they persevere. And now, I think a question here is, how do I know, no, if I'm in high school or just entering the job market? How do I know if I have the adequate people skills? Well, everyone communicates, like everyone can collaborate. I think all humans are creative and have certain level of critical thinking skills. But how do I know if I have the adequate levels, and how do I go about developing these softer skills?
I think, thank you for the question, but I think by the end of high school, by the end of high school, nobody has adequate levels in any of these skills. Obviously,
Okay.
you're probably 18, you still have to learn a lot. Nobody's a proficient public speaker or a creative by the end. Oh, not, well, let's say there's exceptions, but generally the population is at the basic level after you finish high school. That's where you
Mm-hmm.
kind of start developing and maybe going into one direction or the other. How do you develop them? And you can start this from high school already for both, I think, people skills and growth mindset skills.
Mhm.
Two areas which I recommend highly for anybody is volunteering, which is maybe for many of you the first chance, and it was for me the first chance to manage people, or the first chance to collaborate at a larger scale than I would maybe in my uni or in my high school. um, Sports, because it actually teaches you a lot about flexibility, adaptability, but also resilience and grit, especially if you do sports at the even an amateur level, but proficiently. So I think for these two, for people skills and growth mindset skills, volunteering in sports are the way to go. And then for digital skills, nowadays you don't have to follow a university specialized in computing science or coding in general. You can just learn online. There's so many platforms like Coursera, Khan Academy, Google is doing Google Digital Garage to learn digital skills, digital marketing skills in that case. So there's enough opportunity to develop these skills as well, even if you're not doing them with sports or volunteering, so in a physical environment, but you do it from the comfort of your own home with your laptop. So I think this is the way to go for all these three skills clusters.
Great. And I think that now that you mentioned all these platforms, all these online platforms where you can develop these harder skills, these digital skills, um, I have sometimes felt overwhelmed by everything you can learn. No? So I'm not sure if I should take or enroll in a data science course or a coding course. And if it's coding, is it Node.js or Python, or what should I learn? Because there's really a universe out there of lots of stuff that you can just log in and learn for free. So, so what would you tell someone who's not willing and eager to learn, but that can feel overwhelmed by all the offerings that are out there?
To first look inside himself or herself to see what he or she wants to do. Basically, I mean, you obviously need to have a plan, and I like the saying that you have to spend more time on planning than the actual execution, because in many cases,
Okay.
if the planning is done right, the execution is quite easy, if you know what I mean. So planning what your, let's say, next online course will be, and looking really of what's the connection, what your passion is, or what your future work is. That's how you have to look at it. I think if you just start a random course online, you'll most likely not finish it and not be determined to get back to it. So looking a bit inside yourself and understanding your passions, your motivations, and seeing what will be the most beneficial use of your time, basically, as maybe straightforward as that might sound. And there are sites and resources which help you with this. There's a great resource called 80,000 hours, which started at Oxford University in the UK,
Mhm.
connected to the effective altruism movement, which is a movement that enables people to be altruistic, but in an effective way. And with 80,000 hours, they basically help you with both choosing a career, but also in making in general, choices about what you want to do in life, and especially designed for students, and it can work also for high schoolers as well. So happy to share this resource after the call, maybe in a link. But there are resources like this in frameworks like Ikigai, the Japanese framework, which is another great way to see this is my passion, this is what I can get paid for, this is what people need, this is what the world needs, and kind of seeing what that sweet spot is for you. And these things then help you maybe also choose what you want to study in university or what online course you want to choose.
Okay. This is great, and I think you've made it very clear that there are practical approaches to develop the skills that anyone, especially young people, will need to thrive in this VUCA environment that we envision happening in some years from now. Um, could you maybe share like an example on how you approach this? Because maybe you we could see that you're like the best example of this mindset, no, learning, adapting, growing, and really envisioning where you want to get to.
Yeah, I think for me, this last few months, like for many other people, have been a great opportunity to connect the dots looking backward, as Steve Jobs used to say, to look a bit at what I've done, seeing how, in my case, the future of work is a good, let's say, brand under which I can put my work, my life's work until this moment. And I think all of us should go for this reflection phase, especially these days, to, as I like to quote a friend, reflect, um, reimagine, and reenact. I think it was the last one, sort of, put into action. And I think this is really important because this helped me a lot. And for instance, now since the crisis started, I've, as I said, started doing work with this U.S. agency, this U.S. company helping people who are unemployed. Also on the side, I'm doing work with an agency learning public affairs skills because I'm a communications person. This is my educational background. But then I still have a lot to learn in this field. So I'm doing a full-time role. This September, I'm actually starting with an agency in which I can develop my skills and also help them with whatever I can add value to. So doing many things, sometimes people say it's not good, but I personally, and at least my life experience has taught me that, yeah, it's what worked for me, never putting all my eggs into one basket, never just doing just one
Right.
thing, but doing a couple of things and seeing how you can connect the dots between them, because the dots always
Mhm.
connect. It's just a matter of waiting until the right moment and also being ready to connect them, because obviously it's down to you to connect them and to connect the work you do with maybe your passion. But I really believe in this sort of a multi-potentialite, as I think some people call it as well. Some person who's decent in a few subjects that works in two or three subjects at the same time and connects the dots between them. Elon Musk is a great example in this. He's a multi-potentialite. He's an idol of mine. He's somebody I look up to as a genius, literally, somebody who is a great engineer but also a great businessman, and now a great spaceman as well. So
Yes, yes, yes. That's great. I agree. And it seems, no, that maybe in this sense, like young people do have an advantage because we basically have a black canvas where we can just put in every skill that we want and make a very valuable combination of skills from what's available out there. Also, you quoted a very interesting study in one of your articles um, that says that actually young people have an advantage over other age groups because they have more access and are more familiar with the new technologies, which basically allows them to develop more skills and gives them like these valuable assets for the jobs to come. So how should this new generation tackle this opportunity of being not the more prepared or the ones with better access to the job market in the future, and what are the responsibilities of this generation in terms of this advantage that young people have?
I think what's very important to realize is that that's correct. I mean, now with digital everything, because we now do digital learning, digital working because of this situation with COVID-19. Young people are definitely advantaged because of this. I mean, I have parents and I know how difficult it was for them to transition, whilst for
Mm-hmm.
my younger brother, it was very easy. And for me, myself as well. I mean, especially for work, it came natural to work remotely. I have worked remotely before even the crisis. So we do have an advantage, but we don't, what we I think struggle with, and this goes back to your previous question, is that young people nowadays have this so-called paradox of choice. There's so many
Okay.
things you can do, so many courses you can learn, and it's a challenge for all of us, from myself including, what to actually tackle tomorrow morning, what to tackle this afternoon. It's there's always a list of potential things you can do, and time is still limited. So I think that's our biggest challenge for young people, the paradox of choice. And I think my only solution to this is, and now I quote another person I really admire, which is Harari, Yuval Harari, the great author. And he said what young people in general people need these days, and he said this before the crisis, is emotional and mental stability. Literally being uh, good with yourself, good enough that you can listen to your instincts. And your instincts are usually right. If your instinct says, obviously, I don't want to exaggerate with this, but if your instinct says, this afternoon you have two choices, usually you can really listen to the instinct, and it will help you guide you through maybe choosing one or the other option. It worked for me, even though it might sound a bit suspicious maybe, but instincts are great when you have so many options. And otherwise, if you look even on paper, sometimes all options seem to be good. So sometimes just listening to your instinct and also doing that digging deeper inside yourself to understand what motivates you helps. So going back to Harari, having this stability both emotionally and mentally is a great starting point for taking better decisions led by instinct, in a sense.
Right, right. Listen to your heart. No?
It sounds
So
cheesy, I know, but it helps.
no, 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 no. I totally agree, and I think you've just mentioned something interesting because as a young person, at least for me, I struggled with managing all the expectations that people had uh, about me, about what I would become if I would study this, if I would succeed in that, if I would keep volunteering and playing sports and doing everything. So these expectations can be overwhelming and can basically make it hard for you to have this emotional and mental stability. So
Mhm.
um, do you have any experience or any advice on really acquiring this stability, or listening to yourself and to your gut, and not just like on how dealing with all these outside expectations?
Yeah, I mean, it's an ongoing discussion, and it's something which I'm also still learning a lot about,
Hmm.
and I learn as I evolve in life. I think something that worked for me, or actually two things that work for me, are sports and meditation.
Okay.
Sports because it's one of the few moments in my life, at least outside of work, but even at work, it's not as constant. But in sports, it's the moment in which I go into the state of flow. Flow is the state which I'm not sure if you're familiar with the term. It was actually coined by a guy called Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, a Hungarian a native, who said that flow is the state in which you're doing something in between something really challenging and something
Hmm.
really boring. So it's not too challenging that you give up, that like it's impossible to do, but it's not that boring that you give up because you're not interested in it. It's like playing tennis with somebody who's equally good as you. That this is how I see it. So this is when you are actually doing an action, be it sports or maybe in your work, in which you seem that you feel that time doesn't flow anymore, that you're such in a deep state of focus that you just, wow, you don't feel anything but the work you do. So I think you get in this state again from, in my case, from meditation. Daily practice of 20 minutes could already do a lot. And in sports, if you have a sports of choice, in my case it's swimming and football, soccer in the US. These sports get me in that state of flow, which I can then replicate in my work. The body learns this state, and then you can replicate it in your work if you do something you're passionate about. If you don't do something you're passionate about, it's very hard to replicate it in your work or studies, the flow state. But I think that's what helps you. And to answer your question, it helps you to deal with all these the expectations and pressures. If you get into the state of flow, nothing perturbs you. Literally, you're like, yeah, like I think we should all be, at least in some stages during our day. You cannot keep it all day, but having a few moments of flow can get you a long way.
Great. Now, and I'm trying to not to gather all this information that you've been sharing, but basically for not to succeed in the future, we'll need people skills, or softer skills, digital skills, and technological skills that are the harder skills, and also a growth mindset.
Mhm.
No, and we have a variety of resources out there to develop these skills. You mentioned volunteering and sports, and also all these resources online to develop the harder skills. But at the bottom, and to lead with this like um, paradox of not having too many options. We need to be centered and listen to our gut, to our heart, and have this emotional stability. Now, when I say all of this is something very different from which I learned at school. No, school back then, when I was in high school, in middle school, it was something completely different. And I would say that maybe they trained me away from this very important skills, and into other things that might be kind of irrelevant today. Also, so how do we deal with this? Because if I expected to learn everything at school, maybe I wouldn't be learning the right stuff. Also, so what do you think of this, and how should a young person approach this?
I think young people already have this feeling, and I know my brother, who's younger, most of his colleagues share this view that school is outdated in most places of
Mm,
this world. There's a real issue with education being, still designed to prepare us for jobs in factories whilst we're working in offices. So it's literally just the environment in which, in many cases, now I speak from my experience in Romania, but also studying abroad, it's not adapted enough to the job market. It's not adapted to what's needed in this VUCA world. And I think there's only two options, to accept this and still go to university as it is, and don't learn by yourself. Or the other option,
mhm,
which I recommend, is to, yeah, do your degree. It's important to have a degree still. It matters to have that piece of paper. Unfortunately, it still does in many places. But on the side, never see the university or college you choose as the place that will set you up for life, because now learning is a continuous journey. Now
Right.
learning doesn't stop when you're 24 or 25. You have to learn throughout your life. Even if you go to Harvard or Stanford, you might still be irrelevant in 10 years with your degree in terms of the skill you learn. It might actually, a code, even if you do coding, the programming language you learn might be irrelevant in 10 years, and that's a reality. So we should all develop this growth mindset, which again, I actually forgot to mention. Carol Dweck, a famous researcher from, I think, either Stanford or Harvard,
Stanford.
came up with.
Mhm.
Stanford. So it's not my idea. I just grouped it in for the skills itself, skill cluster. But I think this is important to have and develop by yourself. You have to see yourself as your own empowered learner, and don't really count on any university or government to be the one teaching you anything, to be honest. In the near future, I hope we're going to see a change in education, but to be honest, I doubt it. I think it's going to be a change of individuals. We'll start seeing more things as I see them, which is continuous learning. It's every man or woman for himself in terms of your learning journey, because nobody's going to handhold you until you're 80, and even at 80 you will probably need to learn some new things. So
Right.
yeah.
Right. I think that's great advice, David. And we can get what we can from universities and the more
Yeah,
formal education, but we need to be responsible for our own growth path and educational path, and know that the most valuable skills we'll have to learn and develop elsewhere, and be
yeah,
responsible for that
yeah.
educational path.
And I want to say something really controversial, I think, because I guess we have a young audience, so I think they will relate. I chose my university when I chose it, and I still recommend people to choose their universities, especially for the networking or sort of environment you would be living in, and then for
Mhm.
the brand of the university, because at the end of the day, if you include in this ranking of mine learning, well, learning you can do online now. You don't need the university for learning. So it's literally you go to university, you pay for a degree for branding and networking. And these are still important these days, but you
Right.
don't pay for the learning eventually. Obviously, the professors are important, but you can have access to them online. You don't even have to go to Harvard to speak with some of their most important professor in a Coursera course
Mhm.
or even a live session. So do still go to university, but choose wisely in terms of what doors it will open you with the brand of the university, and what sort of people you would meet there in terms of networking. Is it a really international university? That's a great one. Is it a university in which everybody's from the same country? Maybe it's not as good for your future prospects.
Great. So I think we're running out of time. So thank you so much, David. This was super interesting, and you shared some very valuable advice. If you could share this links also with everyone, so they can access all the resources you've gathered through the years, that'd be amazing. And I don't know if you have anything else you'd like to add as a closing.
Thank you for all your questions, and maybe just a little disclosure. I'm also Alejandro, but in Romanian, which is Alexandru. Forgot to mention, that's my second first name. So
Great,
surprise, surprise. The two Alejandro speaking here.
great. Thank you so much, David.
Thank you,
All right.
Alejandro.
Thank
All
you,
the best.
everyone. Bye.
Ciao.